Consciousness is the human ability to perceive oneself, the surrounding environment, and one's own thoughts. Yet, sometimes when we reflect on consciousness, a strange, even somewhat mysterious feeling arises. For example, when walking alone down a street, sitting in a park, or simply spending a quiet moment, our attention suddenly drifts. It's as if we step outside our usual perspective, and everything appears different for a brief instant. When we observe our surroundings closely, we realize that people do not see the world as we do. Everyone lives within their own thoughts, their own experiences, their own little universe. In these moments, we are confronted both with the outer world and with our inner world. It feels as if the world and we are looking at each other, but we do not speak the same language. It is a strange yet astonishing experience. The depth of consciousness confronts us with both solitude and a profound sense of understanding. You notice hundreds of people passing by, cars rushing past, distant lights flickering, all just fleeting images for you. Yet behind each one lies an entire life. Just as in someone else's life, you might exist for only a brief moment. The world has no center. No one stands at the middle of everything. Billions of people think, feel, fear, and hope all at the same time. This happens within an invisible, intangible, yet very real realm of consciousness. Each person's experience plays a small role within this vast existence. It's no coincidence that life is often compared to a theater. People are the actors of this theater, each playing their part. But how real is this theater? Are what we see and say truly as they are? Or do we perceive them the way we want to see them? Many believe that there is a single reality, the same for everyone, independent of observation. The world exists as it is, and we simply look at it. But it might not be so simple. Perhaps reality is not only what we see, perhaps the very act of observing changes it. In other words, we don't just witness the world, we also shape it. This idea has fascinated many philosophers and scientists throughout history. Some suggest that reality may not exist independently of the observer. The world and the consciousness that perceives it are not completely separate. Yet this perspective raises profound questions. If everything is a product of consciousness, what happens when no one is watching? For example, if a tree falls in a forest but no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? Yet everyday life shows us that the world continues regardless of observation. A bird raises its chicks in a nest. If no eyes are watching, do the chicks not grow? Of course they do. The parents feed them, and life goes on. So the key question remains, if events occur even without an observer, how does observation shape reality? Does consciousness create the world or merely witness it? Perhaps the world appears stable because our brains assemble it in a continuous, coherent way. But this explanation is also puzzling. How can millions of different brains agree on the same reality? We all see the same objects in similar ways, experience events in comparable forms. The Irish philosopher and theologian George Berkeley responded to this question by suggesting that the world is never without observation, because God always sees everything. Even if humans did not exist, reality continues uninterrupted, because there is always a consciousness observing it. For some, this idea may be comforting. For others, it might seem like the question has simply shifted to a different level. But the key point may not be God. What matters is the concept of continuous observation. For reality to remain consistent, it must be observed. If we remove this idea from a religious framework, a more general question emerges. How do consciousness, attention, and observation shape reality? Quantum mechanics explores this very question, studying everything from atoms to electrons, from photons to neutrons. Here, our everyday experience often fails to provide answers. The great physicist Einstein argued that the universe exists independently of observation. According to him, the world is stable. Even the smallest particles do not depend on whether we look or not. Yet other physicists, like Niels Bohr, defended the view that the properties of particles are not predetermined and only become definite when observed. The intriguing aspect of quantum mechanics is that reality may only take shape when we look at it or measure it. Consciousness and observation may play a far greater role in the essence of the universe than we usually imagine. In 1972, John Clauser conducted a remarkable experiment. Using photons emitted from calcium atoms, he investigated the connections between subatomic particles. The result was the emergence of entangled particles, where the state of one instantly affects the state of the other. These findings violate the principle of locality. Classical physics tells us that an object can only be influenced by its immediate surroundings. But with entangled particles, the state of one affects the other instantaneously, even if they are separated by light years. John Clauser, Anton Zeilinger, and Alan Aspect were awarded the Nobel Prize in 2022 for their work in this field. Their research demonstrated that quantum entanglement is real and measurable. These discoveries showed that at the quantum level, measuring one particle does not only determine its own state, but also instantly fixes the state of other particles it is entangled with. Our classical understanding of physics breaks down here. The principle that information cannot travel faster than the speed of light loses its usual meaning. As a result, the universe is not locally real. Quantum events are not stable or deterministic. They depend on observation and interaction. In this view, the anti-realists are proven right, and Einstein is proven wrong. The universe is far stranger and more deeply interconnected than we imagine. Particles are linked by invisible threads, and we perceive only a small fraction of this vast web. So, what lies at the deepest level of this interconnectedness? Some scientists believe it is information. In this view, matter and energy form the visible foundation of the world, but behind them lies information, filling the gap between observed reality and the physical universe itself. According to John Archibald Wheeler, reality only takes shape when we observe, measure, and interact with it. Some even suggest that reality itself is a form of information processing. The physical properties of matter and energy are part of this process, but the essence of reality depends on observation and the exchange of information. In other words, the universe is not merely existing. It is actively formed with every observation, every interaction, and every bit of information exchanged. The foundation of reality, Wheeler argued, is bits, units of binary information, yes or no. The behavior of particles is determined only at the moment of measurement, and it can even change depending on where and how the measurement is made. Wheeler's delayed choice experiments demonstrated this. The question posed to reality affects the answer it provides. Reality is like a giant game of 20 questions, but before the game begins, we do not know the target. As we ask yes or no questions, reality shapes itself. Wheeler described this with the phrase, "it from bit." Every element of the physical world arises at its deepest level from a non-material source. Everything we call reality emerges from the asking of yes or no questions and the recording of measurement results. All physical things are of informational origin, and the universe is participatory. These ideas echo Berkeley's philosophy of idealism. This raises a question. If there is no observer, how do processes in the universe continue? For example, thunder rolls, rain falls, dust clouds spin in space. If there is no measurement or information exchange, how do these events occur? Einstein approached this with skepticism, famously asking, "Does the moon exist only when you look at it?" But perhaps we misunderstand what looking really means. Measurement and observation are not limited to physical sight. They also include the exchange of information, interaction, and recording. These questions lead us to explore the nature of reality and consciousness at a much deeper level. According to a theory called panpsychism, consciousness is not merely the product of complex biological systems. Consciousness is a fundamental feature of the universe and is present everywhere. Everything, atoms, particles, carries some degree of consciousness or mental quality. Returning to human consciousness, we see that our awareness arises from the brain and its material energy structure. But if matter does not carry consciousness at its base, how can it give rise to subjective experiences and feelings? Panpsychists respond that matter itself possesses a quality of consciousness. As matter becomes more complex, consciousness becomes richer and more intricate. Yet consciousness exists at every level. we tend to consider only structures resembling the human mind as conscious, perhaps because we project our own experience onto the universe. If consciousness is a fundamental property of reality, it raises a host of questions. How is information propagated? How do particles interact? How does reality emerge through observation? Perhaps there is always a conscious observer in the universe. Perhaps information processing never stops. But what if the universe is like a vast brain? A system constantly exchanging information with itself, processing itself. Who can say that the universe cannot think, or does not think? This perspective might help explain the uncertainty of quantum events, the entanglement of particles across vast distances, and the effects of observation. We often imagine ourselves as a self on the sidelines watching the universe, yet in reality, we are not separate from it. We are entangled with the cosmos. Perhaps when we try to observe the universe, we are merely seeing our own reflection, not the universe itself, and cannot fully perceive the truth. Maybe we are overlooking something always right in front of us. And perhaps it is not out there, but within us. Or perhaps we are part of it, just as it is part of us. Sometimes we might think of ourselves as tiny neurons in the brain of the universe. Each one thinks and feels independently, yet no single neuron can comprehend the entire brain. If one neuron cannot grasp the whole brain, then understanding the universe in its entirety is equally beyond our reach. But we must remember, all of this remains theoretical. Panpsychism and the idea of a thinking universe take us beyond the boundaries of science and into the realm of philosophy. The truth is, we still do not fully understand our own consciousness. To extend it to the entire cosmos is a bold step. The same goes for reality itself. Perhaps the way observation shapes reality, or the universe's lack of locality, is simply a reflection of the limits of our perception. Perhaps one day these paradoxes will be explained, or perhaps they never will. Yet one truth remains. The boundaries of our thought are limited, while the universe is infinitely complex. Whatever reality is, or isn't, we will never fully know it. But think again of that moment, the instant you realize that everyone else lives a life as real and vivid as your own. Suddenly, the words alive and real carry a weight and depth you hadn't felt before. In this interconnected world, the stories we tell, the moments we live, and the events we observe touch the deeper layers of reality, layers that influence far more than we can imagine. Every person, every mind, every tree, leaf, soil, stone, planet, star, and even the smallest particle is part of this vast story. Together, they tell the story of everything. Separation may be merely an illusion. Individual realities converge to form a single, greater reality. Our questions, doubts, and misunderstandings are also part of this play. Just as our thoughts shape our lives, perhaps the universe shapes our thoughts. And perhaps these thoughts then ripple back, subtly altering reality. One thing remains certain. As humans, we possess consciousness, and with it, the desire to understand these processes. If you've watched this video this far, it means you too seek this understanding. And for that, I thank you. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on the notification bell. I'll see you in the next video.